right now. You can be sitting alone. Nothing wrong in your life. Everything is actually fine. And still, something inside you feels heavy. There's no real problem, no real reason, but your chest feels tight. Your thoughts start moving, and suddenly, you don't feel okay anymore. So you reach for your phone. You look for noise. You try to escape that silence, because being alone doesn't feel peaceful. It feels uncomfortable. But here's the truth. Most people never realize. You are not unhappy because you are alone. You are unhappy because when everything becomes quiet, you are finally left alone with the parts of yourself you've been avoiding. And once you understand what is really happening in that silence, you will stop running from it and start finding peace in the one place you were always trying to escape. That you are not hurting from being alone. You are finally confronting the parts of yourself you've been avoiding. When you are around people, your mind is always busy in a very subtle way. You are talking, listening, reacting, thinking about what to say next, wondering how you are being seen, adjusting yourself without even noticing it. All of this keeps your attention outside of you, and because your focus is constantly pulled outward, you rarely stop to look at what is happening inside your own mind. You feel engaged, distracted, occupied, and in that state, everything inside you stays quiet, not because it is gone, but because it is being covered. But the moment you are alone, everything changes in a very quiet but powerful way. There is no conversation to hide in, no one to react to, no noise to keep your mind busy. And suddenly all that external movement disappears. Now there is nothing left to hold your attention outside, so your awareness naturally turns inward, and that is when things begin to surface. Thoughts you were not noticing before slowly come into focus. Emotions you pushed aside start to rise, and small worries that were hidden under distraction begin to feel bigger than they actually are. This is the moment where most people start to feel uncomfortable, and they quickly assume something is wrong. They think being alone is the problem. They think loneliness is hurting them, but that is not what is really happening. What you are feeling is not caused by being alone. It is caused by finally seeing what has been inside you for a long time without interruption. It feels heavy, not because it is new, but because it has been ignored for so long that now in silence, it finally has space to be felt. Most people are not afraid of being alone, even if they believe they are. What they are truly afraid of is sitting with their own thoughts without distraction, feeling emotions they do not fully understand, and meeting a version of themselves they have been avoiding without realizing it. They are afraid of that quiet moment where there is no escape, where nothing is covering the truth of how they actually feel inside. And that feeling you call sadness or emptiness is often misunderstood. It is not a sign that something is broken in you. It is not a sign that you are lacking something. It is simply awareness rising to the surface. It is your mind and your emotions becoming visible in the absence of noise. It is the beginning of seeing yourself clearly, maybe for the first time in a long time. If you run away from this moment, you will keep repeating the same cycle, always needing people, always needing noise, always needing something to avoid what is within you. But if you stay, if you sit with it, even if it feels uncomfortable at first, something slowly begins to change. What once felt heavy starts to feel understandable. What once felt overwhelming starts to feel manageable. And what once felt like sadness starts to reveal itself as clarity. Because in truth, you were never hurting because you were alone. You were hurting because you were finally no longer distracted from yourself. And for the first time, you are beginning to see what has always been there, quietly waiting for your attention. Your mind is addicted to noise. So silence feels like something is wrong. Your mind has been trained, slowly and quietly over time, to depend on constant noise. From the moment you wake up, there is something pulling your attention. You check your phone, you scroll, you watch, you listen, you talk, you react. Even when you are doing nothing important, your mind is still being fed something. This has become normal, so normal that you don't even question it anymore. You have become used to always having something in your head, something in your ears, something in front of your eyes. Because of this, your mind has lost the ability to simply rest in silence. It does not know how to sit still without needing something to hold on to. So when you are finally alone, when everything becomes quiet and there is no distraction left, your mind immediately feels uncomfortable. It starts searching for something, anything, to fill that space. And when it finds nothing, it begins to create a strange feeling, a kind of unease that makes you think something is wrong. But nothing is actually wrong in that moment. The silence is not the problem. The discomfort you feel is simply your mind reacting to the absence of what it has become dependent on. It is like someone who has been running all day suddenly being asked to sit down and stay still. Their body feels restless, their energy feels unsettled, and they think they need to move again, not because movement is necessary, but because stillness feels unfamiliar. In the same way, your mind has been running on constant stimulation for so long that silence now feels unnatural. It feels empty. It feels strange. And sometimes it even feels uncomfortable. But this discomfort is not a sign that silence is bad. It is a sign that your mind has forgotten how to be at ease without noise. This is why you quickly reach for your phone, open something random, or try to distract yourself the moment you feel that quiet discomfort. You are not doing it because you truly need it. You are doing it because your mind is trying to return to what feels familiar. It is trying to escape the silence, not because silence is harmful, but because it is not used to it anymore. But if you stay in that silence even for a little longer than usual, something interesting begins to happen. At first it feels uncomfortable. Your thoughts may become louder. Your restlessness may increase, and you may feel the urge to escape. But if you don't run away, if you allow yourself to sit there without reacting, your mind slowly begins to settle. The same silence that felt strange starts to feel softer. The same stillness that felt heavy begins to feel lighter. Over time, your mind starts to remember something it had forgotten. It remembers that it does not always need noise to feel okay. It learns that peace is not found in constant stimulation, but in the absence of it. And gradually, silence stops feeling like something is wrong and starts feeling like something is finally right. Because the truth is simple, but often ignored. You are not uncomfortable because silence is painful. You're uncomfortable because your mind has become dependent on noise. And the moment you break that dependence, the moment you allow yourself to sit in quiet without escaping, then you begin to experience a different kind of peace, one that does not rely on anything outside of you. You mistake stillness for emptiness because you've never been taught what real peace feels like. When everything slows down around you, when there is no noise, no activity, no constant movement, your mind immediately tries to judge that moment. It looks at the stillness, and instead of recognizing it as calm, it labels it as empty. You sit in a quiet space. Nothing is happening, and instead of feeling relaxed, something inside you says, "This feels wrong. This feels like something is missing." But the truth is, nothing is missing in that moment. What you are experiencing is something very rare. A moment without pressure, without distraction, without noise. It is a natural state of peace, but because you are not used to it, that your mind misunderstands it. You have spent so much time in activity, in stimulation, in constant engagement, that stillness now feels unfamiliar. And anything unfamiliar, your mind quickly labels as uncomfortable. From a young age, you were never really taught what real peace feels like. You were taught how to stay busy, how to keep moving, how to fill your time, how to chase things, how to stay connected to the outside world. You were shown that happiness comes from doing something, from achieving something, from being surrounded by something. But no one showed you how to sit quietly and feel complete without needing anything at all. So now, when you experience stillness, your mind becomes confused. It expects stimulation. It expects something to happen. It expects some kind of excitement. And when none of that appears, it assumes something is wrong. It tells you that you are empty, that you are alone, that something is missing from your life. But in reality, nothing is missing. You are simply experiencing a state that your mind does not yet understand. Stillness is not emptiness. It is the absence of noise. It is the space where your mind is not being pulled in every direction. It is the moment where you are not chasing anything, not reacting to anything, not trying to become anything. And because you are so used to movement, this lack of movement feels like a lack of meaning. But the deeper truth is, stillness is where real peace lives. It is not loud. It is not exciting. It does not try to grab your attention. It is quiet, steady, and gentle. It does not give you a rush, but it gives you something deeper, something more stable. And the only reason it feels uncomfortable right now is because you have been trained to look for something else. If you keep running away from stillness, you will always feel like something is missing, because your mind will never learn what peace actually feels like. But if you stay in that stillness, if you allow yourself to sit in that quiet moment without judging it, without trying to escape it, something begins to shift. Slowly, very slowly, your mind starts to relax. The need for constant stimulation begins to fade, and the same stillness that once felt empty begins to feel calm. You start to notice that nothing is actually missing. You begin to feel a quiet sense of completeness, not because something was added to your life, but because you stopped needing something to fill it. And that is when you understand something most people never do. You were never empty. You were just never taught how to recognize peace when it appeared in its simplest form. You don't always seek people for connection. You seek them to escape yourself. There is a truth here that is uncomfortable to admit, but once you see it clearly, it changes the way you understand your own behavior. Not every time you reach out to someone is because you truly need connection. Not every conversation comes from a place of genuine presence. Sometimes, very quietly, without even realizing it, you seek people because they help you escape what is happening inside you. When you are alone, your mind becomes visible. Your thoughts slow down enough for you to notice them. Your emotions become clearer, and you begin to feel things you usually avoid. But when you are with someone, your attention immediately shifts outward. You start focusing on their words, their reactions, the flow of the conversation, how you are being seen, what to say next. And in that moment, your inner world becomes quieter, not because it is healed, but because it is being covered again. This is why being around people can feel like relief. You feel lighter, more relaxed, less aware of your own thoughts. It almost feels like peace, but if you look closely, it is not the same as true peace. It is a temporary escape. It is a break from facing yourself. And because that relief feels good, your mind starts to depend on it. You begin to believe that you need people in order to feel okay. So you keep going back to that feeling. You seek conversations, messages, presence, not always because your heart is full, but because your mind wants to avoid silence. And slowly, without noticing, you build a habit where being with others becomes your way of not being with yourself. But the moment you are alone again, everything returns. The thoughts, the emotions, the quiet discomfort. It all comes back, sometimes even stronger than before. And this confuses you. You start to think something is wrong with you, or that you simply cannot handle being alone. But the truth is much simpler. You are not weak, and you are not broken. You have just trained yourself to escape instead of understand. Real connection is not about using people to feel better. It is about sharing yourself when you are already at ease within. But when you depend on others to escape your own mind, every connection becomes a temporary solution. It can never truly satisfy you, because the real discomfort is still waiting for you the moment the noise fades. This is why you may feel the need to constantly check your phone, to keep conversations going, to always have someone around, even when there is nothing important to say. It is not always about the other person. It is about what you are trying not to feel when you are by yourself. But something powerful happens when you stop using people as an escape. When you learn to sit with yourself, even when it feels uncomfortable at first, you begin to understand your own thoughts. Instead of running from them, you begin to feel your emotions without needing to cover them. And slowly, that inner discomfort starts to lose its intensity. Then when you choose to be with others, it comes from a different place. Not from need, not from escape, but from genuine connection. You are no longer trying to fill a gap inside you. You are simply sharing a moment. And that kind of connection feels lighter, more real, and more peaceful. Because in the end, the problem was never people, and the solution was never more noise. The real shift happens when you stop running away from yourself and finally become someone you no longer need to escape from. In silence, your mind exposes everything you've been running from. When everything becomes quiet, when there is no conversation, no distraction, no constant movement around you, something very honest begins to happen. Your mind starts to show you what has been hidden beneath the noise, not because it wants to hurt you, but because silence creates space. And in that space, everything you have been pushing away finally has a chance to come forward. Thoughts you ignored earlier in the day begin to return. Small worries that seemed unimportant suddenly feel bigger. Memories you did not want to think about quietly appear. Emotions you kept delaying, telling yourself you would deal with them later, begin to rise without asking for permission. And in that moment, it can feel overwhelming, as if everything is happening at once. But the truth is, none of this is new. Nothing you are experiencing in that silence was created in that moment. It was already there, sitting in the background of your mind, waiting for attention. The only difference is that now, there is nothing left to cover it. No noise to distract you, no activity to escape into, no one to shift your focus toward. So naturally, your awareness turns inward, and you begin to see clearly what you have been avoiding. This is why silence can feel heavy at first. It feels like too much, like your mind is suddenly working against you. But your mind is not your enemy in that moment. It is simply revealing what has been left unresolved. It is bringing your attention to the parts of your experience that you have not fully faced or understood. And because you are not used to seeing it all at once, it feels intense. Most people respond to this by trying to escape as quickly as possible. They reach for their phone. They turn on something to watch. They look for someone to talk to, anything to avoid staying in that silence. And while this brings temporary relief, it also keeps the same patterns alive. Because what you avoid does not disappear. It simply waits for the next quiet moment to return again. But if instead of running, you choose to stay, something different begins to happen. At first, it may feel uncomfortable. Your thoughts may seem loud, your emotions may feel strong, and your mind may try to pull you away from that moment. But if you remain present, without reacting, without trying to fix or push anything away, the intensity slowly begins to settle. You start to notice that thoughts come and go. They rise, stay for a moment, and then fade. Emotions move through you, not as permanent states, but as temporary waves. What once felt overwhelming begins to feel more understandable. And slowly, you realize something important. These thoughts and feelings do not have power over you, unless you immediately believe them or try to escape them. Silence does not trap you. It reveals you. It shows you what has been sitting inside your mind, not to overwhelm you, but to give you a chance to finally understand it. And when you stop running from it, when you allow yourself to observe without fear, that same silence becomes a place of clarity instead of discomfort. Because in the end, what you have been running from was never as powerful as it felt. It only seemed that way because you never stayed long enough to see it clearly. And the moment you stop escaping, the moment you allow silence to do its work, you begin to realize that your mind is not something to fear. It is something to understand. You've tied your worth to attention. So being alone feels like losing value. Somewhere along the way, without even realizing it, you started connecting your value to how much attention you receive. It didn't happen all at once. It was built slowly, through small moments, through reactions, through how people responded to you. When someone noticed you, you felt important. When someone replied to you, you felt seen. When someone needed you, you felt valuable. And over time, your mind quietly created a connection between attention and self-worth. So now, when you are surrounded by people, when there are messages, conversations, or reactions, you feel a sense of presence. You feel like you matter, like you exist in a way that is being recognized. But when all of that disappears, when there are no messages, no conversations, no one around you, something inside begins to feel different. It feels like something has been taken away, even though nothing real has changed. This is why being alone can feel heavier than it actually is. It is not just the absence of people. It is the absence of the attention you have learned to associate with your value. And when that attention is gone, your mind starts to question your importance. It quietly asks, if no one is here, if no one is noticing me, if no one is responding to me, then do I still matter in the same way? But this question is based on a belief that was never true. Your worth was never created by attention, and it does not disappear in its absence. It only feels that way because your mind has been trained to measure your value through external signals, likes, messages, responses, presence. These have become silent indicators that your mind uses to define how you feel about yourself. This is also why comparison becomes so strong in moments of solitude. When you are alone, your mind may start thinking about others, what they are doing, who they are with, how their life looks. And without even noticing, you begin to measure yourself against that image. You begin to feel like you are missing something, like others are experiencing more, like you are falling behind. But all of this is happening inside your mind, built on assumptions, not reality. The deeper truth is simple, but difficult to accept at first. Your value does not increase when people give you attention, and it does not decrease when you are alone. It remains the same, steady and unchanged, whether you are surrounded by others or sitting in complete silence. The only thing that changes is your perception of it. When you begin to understand this, something inside you starts to shift. You stop chasing attention as a way to feel complete. You stop needing constant validation to feel okay. And slowly, being alone no longer feels like losing something. It starts to feel neutral, and then eventually, it starts to feel freeing. Because now, you are no longer depending on the outside world to tell you who you are. You are not waiting for someone to notice you in order to feel real. You begin to feel a quiet sense of stability within yourself, a feeling that does not come from others, and therefore cannot be taken away when others are not there. And this is where real strength begins. When your sense of worth is no longer tied to attention, you become less affected by its presence and its absence. You can be with people without needing their validation, and you can be alone without questioning your value. Because in the end, the problem was never that you were alone, and the problem was that you believed your worth needed to be confirmed by someone else. And the moment you let go of that belief, being alone stops feeling like a loss and starts feeling like a return to yourself. You were never taught how to sit with yourself. So your own presence feels unfamiliar. From the very beginning of your life, you were taught how to move in the world, but not how to sit within yourself. You were taught how to speak to others, how to respond, how to behave, how to fit in, how to stay busy, how to keep going. You learned how to build connections, how to stay engaged, how to avoid awkward silence, how to fill empty moments. But no one ever showed you how to be alone with your own mind without feeling uncomfortable. So now, when you find yourself in a quiet space, with no one around, nothing to do, then nowhere to direct your attention, it feels unfamiliar. It feels like you have entered a place you were never trained to understand. And anything unfamiliar naturally feels uncomfortable at first. Not because it is wrong, but because it is new to you. When you sit with yourself, without distraction, you begin to notice your thoughts more clearly. You notice how your mind moves, how it jumps from one idea to another, how it brings up memories, worries, questions. You begin to feel your emotions more directly, without anything covering them. And because you have never practiced this before, it can feel like too much, like you are not in control, like something is off. But nothing is off. You are simply becoming aware of your inner world in a way you never allowed yourself to before. It is like entering a room that has always been there, but you never took the time to explore it. At first, everything feels unfamiliar, maybe even overwhelming, but that does not mean the room is dangerous. It only means you are seeing it for the first time. Most people spend their entire lives avoiding this space. They fill every moment with noise, with activity, with interaction, not because they always need it, but because it helps them avoid this unfamiliar feeling. And over time, this avoidance turns into dependence. They forget how to be with themselves, and their own presence starts to feel uncomfortable, almost like something to escape from. But your own presence is not something to fear. It only feels that way because you have never spent enough time there to understand it. The more you sit with yourself, sit even in small moments, the more that unfamiliar feeling begins to fade. What once felt strange starts to feel normal. What once felt uncomfortable begins to feel calm. You begin to notice that your thoughts are not as overwhelming as they seemed. You start to understand your emotions instead of being controlled by them. You begin to feel a quiet sense of stability, Not because something outside has changed, but because you are no longer disconnected from yourself. And slowly, something beautiful happens. The need to escape yourself begins to disappear. You no longer feel the same urgency to distract yourself, to fill every empty moment, to run from silence. Instead, you start to appreciate it. You begin to see that being alone is not a punishment. It is a space where you can actually reconnect with yourself without interference. Because the truth is simple. You were never taught how to sit with yourself, so your own presence started to feel unfamiliar. But once you learn it, once you give yourself time to understand your own mind, your own thoughts, your own emotions, that unfamiliar feeling transforms into something else entirely. It becomes comfort. It becomes clarity. It becomes a quiet kind of peace that does not depend on anyone or anything outside of you. And in that moment, you realize something most people never fully understand. You were never incomplete when you were alone. You were simply unpracticed in being with yourself. Your suffering comes from resisting the moment, not from being alone. At the deepest level, what you are feeling in those quiet moments is not caused by being alone itself. It is created by your resistance to that moment. There is a subtle fight happening inside you, a quiet rejection of what is right in front of you. You sit in silence, and instead of allowing it, your mind begins to say, "This should be different. I don't want this. Something is missing. I need something else." And that inner resistance is what creates the tension you feel. The moment itself is actually very simple. You are sitting, breathing, existing. Nothing harmful is happening, but your mind is not accepting it as it is. It is comparing it to what it thinks should be happening. It wants noise instead of silence, people instead of solitude, movement instead of stillness. And in that gap between what is and what your mind wants, suffering is created. This is why two people can be in the exact same situation, one sitting alone in a quiet room. One feels peaceful, relaxed, even content, while the other feels restless, empty, and uncomfortable. The environment is the same, but the experience is completely different. The difference is not the moment, it is the relationship with the moment. One person accepts it, the other resists it. Resistance is not always loud or obvious. It can be very quiet. It can show up as a small thought that says, "I don't like this," or a feeling that something is off, or an urge to immediately change what is happening. You may not even notice it clearly, but it is there, shaping how you feel. The more you resist, the heavier the moment becomes. The more you try to escape it, the more uncomfortable it feels. This is why you reach for distractions so quickly. Not because the moment is unbearable, but because your mind does not want to stay in it. It wants to move away, to replace it with something more familiar, something that feels easier. But every time you escape, you strengthen this pattern. You teach your mind that the present moment is something to avoid, and that discomfort must always be replaced instead of understood. But something powerful happens when you stop resisting, when you sit in that same moment without trying to change it, without labeling it as bad, without immediately escaping. You begin to notice a shift. At first, your mind may still try to pull you away. Thoughts will come, urges will rise, discomfort may still be there. But if you do not react to them, if you simply allow the moment to be as it is, the tension slowly begins to fade. You start to realize that the moment itself was never painful. It was your reaction to it that made it feel that way. Without resistance, the same silence feels softer. The same stillness feels lighter. The same solitude feels calmer. Nothing outside has changed, but your experience has completely transformed. This is where real freedom begins, not by changing every situation, not by filling every quiet moment, but by changing how you relate to what is already here. When you stop fighting the present, you stop creating unnecessary suffering. You begin to experience moments as they are, without adding extra weight to them. And slowly, being alone no longer feels like something you need to escape. It becomes something you can accept. And in that acceptance, you discover a kind of peace that was always there, hidden beneath your resistance. Because in the end, the problem was never that you were alone. The problem was that you were not allowing yourself to fully be where you already were. And the moment you stop resisting, you realize something simple but powerful. There was nothing to fix. There was only something to understand. And now, if you look at it honestly, nothing about being alone has actually changed. The silence is still the same. The room is still the same. Your life is still the same. But your understanding is different, and that changes everything, because you can finally see that what you were running from was never loneliness. It was yourself. It was the thoughts you didn't want to face, the emotions you didn't understand, the silence you never gave a chance. And all this time, you thought the answer was outside. More people, more noise, more distraction. But none of those things were ever going to give you real peace, because they were only helping you escape, not heal. Now, for the first time, you have a different choice. You can still run. You can still fill every quiet moment. You can still avoid that inner space, or you can stay. You can sit in that silence without rushing to escape. You can let your thoughts come without believing every single one. You can feel what you feel without trying to push it away. And slowly, something inside you begins to change. The same silence that once felt heavy starts to feel calm. The same solitude that once felt empty starts to feel full. The same moment you were trying to escape becomes the place where you finally feel at ease. And that is the shift most people never reach, because they never stay long enough to see it. So next time you find yourself alone, don't run so quickly. Just pause, even for a moment, and notice. Maybe nothing is missing. Maybe, for the first time, nothing needs to be added. And in that quiet realization, you begin to understand something simple, but deeply powerful. Being alone was never your weakness. It was the place where your peace was waiting for you all along.